suppose there's only one thing left to do really. Months of planning. Days of grinding. Okay, so I've fitted up those new feet on the unit. These are the industrial skates that I bought the other day, or got the other day rather. I really didn't like how the legs were looking before. It just didn't suit the whole style of the case. It just sort of dragged it down a little bit, but I'm really happy with how this is looking. They're just tack welded in place for the second before I go and finish weld them out. And you know that pump that I had there? Well, I did something. I bought myself an eco pump. I fired the other one up and it was the most amazingly powerful little 12 volt pump that I've laid my big grimy hands on recently, but it sounded a bit like a jet engine. It wouldn't have been suitable for the noise level that I was trying to achieve with this thing. It just was ripping along way too hard. We'll do a bit of a water test shortly just to prove that it doesn't leak everywhere. I've actually got to still pull everything apart and properly seal all the joints up, so it won't be terribly involved just yet. I have tested it initially just to make sure the functional loop works quite well, and that was a grand success. I'm going around just finishing some things off video just because it's a bit boring to watch, some of the finished metalwork and things like that. I added a bar to the PCIe riser board. It was just a little bit wonky, not really that stable. The paint should hopefully show up this week, and then we can get an undercoat on it, and then hopefully the first coat of yellow. So I'm mega excited to see how that's going to look, because this thing, even though it weighs a ton, I'm so bloody happy with how this turned out. It looks awesome. And then hopefully we can put some bits and pieces in it very shortly. I'll do a separate video of the actual computer nerdy buildy bit, and we'll get this thing fired up and we'll see how low of an ambient temperature I can get on the CPU. It's going to be pretty funny. Alright, let's do some more welding and grinding and smashing and bashing and get this thing sort of finished up a bit more. Okay, so we finally got to the stage of putting the first coat of primer on the case, and we're just going to go through, and this is sort of like the first cover coat, I suppose you could call it, where you paint the steel and then see what nasty little defects and things pop up, where you need to improve things and what you need to go back and regrind again. I can already see from doing the bottom that there's just a couple of little spots down in here that I need to go back through and tart up a little bit. So we're just going to finish off putting the primer back onto the rest of the case, and then we'll see how it pops up and what we need to go back and give another grind, give another sand, and get it looking nice and flat and real good like. Okay, so we've got the sort of first and final coat of primer on. I had to go back in a few areas just to touch things up and just get rid of some scratch marks that were present. So it's now the next day. I've let this cure overnight for 24 hours and we're gonna put on the first coat of yellow and see how this thing looks. So things didn't really quite go to plan. So I started painting this yellow paint, and it turns out that John Deere yellow is actually the brightest yellow I've ever come across. I looked up some pictures on the internet and saw something I thought was John Deere yellow, which kind of looked a little bit like Caterpillar yellow. And yeah, nah. So I stuffed up. It's roughly a week or so after we did that little montage of painting, and I'm currently waiting on some actual Caterpillar yellow paint. So I'll probably do a couple more things, but in the next episode we'll actually paint this thing yellow and then start putting it all back together. I've actually started pulling apart the industrial skates, and I've painted the important areas black, just because I'm going for that Caterpillar yellow and black sort of theme. And so hopefully there's actually one just now, and so that one still needs another coat of paint, and we'll get them all back together shortly and get this thing all finished off. I've actually started mocking up a little fan grate to go over the top of the 180mm fans on the top. That'll actually be yellow. As for hardware in this case, I'm actually probably going to wait until the release of the Intel 12900K or 9900K, whatever it is, comes out, and then put the new Intel chipset in there and run it like a big beastie workstation. Not entirely sure what I'll do for graphics and storage and all that sort of business yet. I was going to put an AMD 5950X in it, but I might save that for the next PC build, which I'm going to do out of aluminium after so many of you requested could I do something out of Ali. So I've had a few thoughts about that and come up with some pretty cool ideas that I think we're all going to like, aren't we, Poppy? Do you like the idea of building something else? Yeah? What if we built a barbecue next? That'd be a cool thing. Little smoker barbecue. Anyway, that's for another episode. So, yeah, once the paint turns up, I'll do another shorter episode like this one, and we'll get this thing in some colour. We'll put all the water cooling stuff back on it, and then it will sit aside until the relevant hardware becomes available, which should be sometime in the next sort of month or so, depending on chip shortage and stuff in Australia. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, it's all coming out very nicely. All right, take it easy.